Dumelang, libitso la ka gi Penuel Lipene Enso. I hope my Sutu was pretty dope there. So today I'm doing a bit of history about the Sutu nation, BaSotho. BaSotho would be the plural, Moshoeshoe would be the singular. When I started doing research, I found myself having more questions than answers. And because of that, I decided to just do a read of what I found. I really, really hope in the comments that many of you are going to school and educate myself and many of us as much as possible. I've made videos in the past about the Zulu nation. I've made videos in the past about the Afrikaner nation. And recently I spoke about the complex Xhosa community as well. So this carries on in that vein of uncovering a lot of the different cultural groups that make up South Africa or Southern Africa. There are arguably over 7 million BaSotho people, with 5 million of them being in South Africa, 2 million being in Lesotho, their own terrain. A few thousand in Botswana, Eswatini, and Namibia. The Sutu people, also known as BaSotho, have a rich history rooted in their migration from Northeast Africa and their subsequent settlement in Southern Africa. I hope you guys will help us because the little bit of research I found told me that Sutu means brown. Brown or black. So BaSotho are the brown people. If I'm incorrect, please correct me and let us learn together. As far as we know in South Africa, there are 3 types of Sutu people. The Northern Sutu, which we know as the Pedi people. The Southern Sutu, which are the most popular and the ones that are based in Lesotho. And then the Tswana people, of which they would also have their own nation of Botswana. Aside from Lesotho and South Africa, 60,000 people speak a language called Silozi, which is a very close relative of Sesotho in the country of Zambia. The BaSotho nation is a mixture of Bantu-speaking clans that mixed with the San people who already lived in Southern Africa when they arrived there back in the 5th century AD. So for some people, you would find out that the Sutu people link their history all the way to the 5th century, contrary to what European history and other history would tell you, that when white settlers, the Dutch and the British, landed in 1652, specifically the Dutch, there were no black people here. The Bantu people, the San, the Khoi, were already in South Africa and Southern Africa from 500 CE or AD. Bantu-speaking people had settled fully in South Africa by 1500 already. Separation from the Botswana is assumed to have taken place by the 14th century. So this group of people splits, Sutu, Botswana, back in the 14th century. Some BaSotho people split from the Nguni, while others got assimilated into building the Nguni nation. The Nguni nation today we know as the Zulus, the Xhosas, the Swatis, and the Ndebeles. Again, if you've watched any of my previous videos, it's way more complex than that. Abantu Basembo, you've got the Hlubis, you've got, when you split Mpondo Mise, Abatembu, etc., etc. But for ease, at least what we know, Xhosa, Zulu, Swati, Ndebele. By at least the 17th century, a series of BaSotho kingdoms covered the southern portion of the African plateau, nowadays the Free State province and parts of Gauteng and the northwest. They are believed to have migrated south around the 5th century AD and established diverse settlements and kingdoms. Evidence of Sutu-speaking iron workers, possibly predating the Bantu-speaking migrations, is found in various parts of South Africa dating back to the 8th and 11th centuries. All the way back then, iron workers who linked themselves as Sutu-speaking people. The first pottery associated with the Sutu, called icon pottery, dates to between 1300 and 1500. Over time, various groups, including the Northern Sutu, the Bapedi, the Southern Sutu, and the Southern Sutu emerged, with the Southern Sutu eventually forming the nation of Lesotho. Key events in their history include the Mfecane, Difakane, a series of wars and migrations in the 19th century, and the establishment of Lesotho under the leadership of King Moshoeshoe I. The Mfecane would be wars because of Ushaka, who was the leader of the Zulus at the time, going around and building this mighty Zulu kingdom, which was an amalgamation of other Nguni groups. And in that, many of the people, Nguni speaking, Sutu speaking, Xhosa speaking, or variations thereof, migrating because of those wars, Difaqane, Mfecane. Some people also just migrating because of drought, because of their herds of livestock needing grazing, etc., etc. The southern Sutu of Lesotho's identity is closely linked to the creation of the nation by the British after the Third BaSotho War, when Moshoeshoe I sought British protection. Fundamentally important for people that do not know that the whole concept of the nation and the land of Lesotho was because Moshoeshoe, the leader, the king, after having fought all these wars, went and asked for the British monarch to please help him protect his land, which would become Lesotho later. The Sutu language, Sesotho, is a Bantu language with dialects influenced by other Sutu-speaking groups, such as the Tswana and the Pedi. The British and the Boers, which were Dutch descendants, divided Sutu land amongst themselves in the late 19th century. And if you look at some of the questions that I'd end up having, some of them would be around some of this, what is known to some people as Sutu land, that was taken by the British and taken by the Dutch or the Boers, and claiming it for themselves in the 19th century, where many Sutu people are saying, but this is still our land. That was our land. And some of them still want it to this day. Lesotho was officially established as a British protectorate in 1869, following the Convention of Aliwal North, which was a result of conflicts between the British and Boers and Moshoeshoe I. Some of the southern Sutu speakers who were not part of Moshoeshoe's kingdom when he united some of their tribesmen are living in Gauteng, while some are found west of KwaZulu-Natal, the north of the Eastern Cape, and most of the Free State province. Some would even argue parts of Mpumalanga are some of these native Sutu people who ended up not falling under this land that we circle now called Lesotho. The Free State / BaSotho Wars refers to a series of wars fought between King Moshoeshoe I, the ruler of the BaSotho kingdom, and white settlers in what is now known as the Free State. These can be divided into the Senecal's War of 1858, the Sekriti War in 1865 to 1866, and the Third BaSotho War, 1867 to 1868. These three wars were fought over the territorial rights in the area between the Caledon and Orange rivers, from present-day Wepener to Zastron, and the area north of the Caledon River, which includes present-day Harrismith and the area further westwards. The wars resulted in the white settlers acquiring large tracts of land from BaSotho, and the BaSotho eventually accepting annexation as part of the British Empire. Who was Moshoeshoe? Moshoeshoe was the first king of Lesotho. He was the first son of Mokgakane, a minor chief of the Bamukoteli lineage, or Bamukotedi lineage, a branch of the Kwena crocodile clan. In his youth, he helped his father gain power over some smaller clans. In 1820, at the age of 34, Moshoeshoe succeeded his father as the Bamukoteli or Bamukotedi chief and formed his own clan. He and his followers settled at the Butabute mountain. He became the first and longest serving king of Lesotho in 1822. His original name, Lipoko, translates as dispute, which originated from accusations of witchcraft, which were levied on a man in Menghuaneng around the time of his birth. The current king of Lesotho is Letsie III. He ascended the throne in 1996 following the death of his father, King Moshoeshoe II. I think I'll stop there. So, I'm a Zulu boy from KZN. Well, before I left the Zulu nation officially. And I've been fascinated by the Sutu kingdom of the mountains of Ukahlamba and Lesotho and those areas. I had the privilege of visiting Maseru a couple of years ago and seeing the beauty of the mountains in Lesotho And there, number one, after being disappointed at what it looked like, because, I guess we expect, especially when you come from a Joburg, you expect a certain level of development, only to realize that some of these places, Lesotho, Eswatini, Mozambique, are almost like some of our more smaller towns, villages, as Lali, Nemakaya, and not as developed, and to try and figure out why. Having studied my family history, Omlochwa, where I come from, Ozita, Ontumbeza, one of the things I was told was that there might be a link of our surname Omlochwa coming from the mountains of Lesotho, meaning that there's a chance that I may be a Moshoeshoe person if you go historically. Part of why I do this history is to figure out things like, no, but I'm Zulu. Only to realize that the Zulus were a clan. Or Zulu Gamalandela. Uzulu Gamalandela was a person. You fast forward later, you'd get Ushaga, who's a descendant, who would, after a long, complicated story for another day, comes back, takes over as king of the Zulus, and then comes and consolidates these clans, which some of them were around that area. They were not known as Zulus at the time. They were whatever groups they were, or known as whatever clans, Omtetwa or Ngumalo, as an example. Other people would disperse in various ways, some becoming Swati, some moving towards the Eastern Cape, Western Cape before they fought the British, and becoming Amaxhosa under Uyinza who welcomed them. But they were from different clans. So you realize that even people that say, Mina ngingumZulu, they may not be direct descendants of uZulu Gamalandela. They were just consolidated under Ushaga Gasenza Ngakhona at the time. So similarly, if you'd hear that Umlochwa is umZulu, it may be that Umlochwa come from the mountains, and maybe the mountains are what we call modern-day Lesotho today, and they came down and they joined this Zulu kingdom of Ushaga Gasenza Ngakhona to a point where today I'm saying, no, mina ngumZulu angeke ungitshele, because umlando wasekhaya, we are Zulu people, etc. And then the stories of how Omlochwa fought as part of the Zulu army. We don't know if they fought as part of the army or if they were conquered as part of certain clans. These are the things that we've sort of lost in our history. That's my first fascination with the Sutu people and Lesotho, that there may be a family link for me. When you come from northern KZN, where I'm from in Newcastle, and you drive to Winterton, the Drakensberg Mountains, beautiful, other side of Ladysmith, you see that beautiful range of mountains, Ukahlamba. And then you find out that that range also forms part of the range of the mountains that form Lesotho. Now, we think provinces are these like God-made, divisions, but they're not. They're man-made. So, this mountain is here or there is literally some man decided it's one piece of land. Because whatever God you believe in didn't separate it in that way. The mountains were there and we share them across borders. So I would see these mountains, going to sing as a choir boy with the Drakensberg Boys Choir. You'd go and sing and you'd be like, hey, those are beautiful mountains. You'd hear about water. Hey, by the way, before I forget, shout out to my sponsor, H2O water. I'll drop the context in the description. You'd hear about the water that comes from Lesotho and how delicious it is from the highlands. And even while visiting there, I realized that Sutu history is complicated even for ordinary Sutu people, especially the ones that fall into South Africa. As I said, 7 million BaSotho people, with 5 million of them living in South Africa. And when you hear stories about how there were fights over land, the British with the Boers, you have to ask, is the Free State originally Sutu land? Because today we speak about the Orange Free State, the Vrystaat, where Afrikaners maybe fought with Moshoeshoe and they got that land. Conquest. We'll allow it. But maybe BaSotho people are saying, no, but we want our land back. Yes, we fought with the Dutch and the British. But after that fight, this land wasn't meant to go to the Union of South Africa. If anything, maybe those Dutch and British people should have settled in Lesotho, with the Free State forming part of Lesotho. I've got family in the south of Gauteng, in the Vaal, Sebokeng, De Deer, etc., the Gampi, family. We've actually got a family farm there. My cousins, Tapelo, Ofense, Lebu, Neo. Fond of them. They are Sutu-speaking people. And when you go to the Vaal, a lot of the people there are Sutu-speaking people. Again, you ask, if you're Sutu-speaking, very close to the Free State, of course, Sutu-speaking, very close to Lesotho. That's when you start hearing this argument for, but all of these people, all of these black people settled here, these were all Sutu people, including, as it says here in the research, parts of KwaZulu-Natal, all the way to Free State, Harry Smith, Lady Smith, maybe even parts of Mpumalanga, because the Free State also borders Mpumalanga. One of the ministers in Lesotho, as of a few years ago, has been fighting and saying they want to reclaim some of this land and make it Lesotho land. And it's conversations they've had with the South African government, of which the South African government was like, no, we can't agree to that. So you want to know some of this history, where it comes from, what it means. The Sutu people become unique because they are a horse-riding people, a lot of it being because they come from the mountains. They wear the blankets, the traditional Sutu blankets, which you'd learn over time that these were gifts given to Moshoeshoe from people from Europe, the settlers. When you do the research, you also find out the Sutu language was formalized in writing by French missionaries. I'd even write a tweet, of which I'd obviously be criticized by BaSotho people, but it was genuinely asking, if the French missionaries were involved or instrumental in documenting Sutu as a written language, not English people, not German or Portuguese or whatever, it's French missionaries. Could it be that the le in Lesotho is French? The Sutu, Lesotho. No, it's not. I'm like, just asking. What is the influence of the French people in Lesotho? Do they still have some type of stake? What is the interest of the British monarch, which has been responsible for colonies, and seemingly Lesotho becomes one of them, where Moshoeshoe would have to ask them to please intervene with the British and the Dutch, and it would be the Queen to come and say, it's fine, give Moshoeshoe his land. Where does the word Moshoeshoe comes from if this guy's name is Lipoko? And the argument for some is that when he would defeat certain clans that he'd fight, he would shave the beards of the men. And the shwe would be the sound of the shaving. Shwe. Then we've got a cloth known as the shwe cloth, which some people say is actually inspired by Moshoeshoe, because when other European settlers or visitors would come through, they would gift him this cloth that we know as shwe cloth today, because it would be gifted to Moshoeshoe. He would wear it, and then he became a fashion icon. And other people would be like, we want to wear the same cloth as our king. And we'd have what we now know as shwe cloth. The history of the straw hats as well. Again, shout out to H2O, by the way. I'm going to send their details in the description. The Lesotho Highlands Water Project is an ongoing water supply project with a hydropower component developed in partnership with between the governments of Lesotho and South Africa. There's a reason why I'm reading this. Well, besides that, apparently their water is banging. It comprises a system of several large dams and tunnels throughout Lesotho and delivers water to the Vaal River system in South Africa. In Lesotho, it involves the rivers Malibamatso, Matsoku, Sengunyane, and Sengu. It is Africa's largest water transfer scheme. As of 2015, royalties paid by South Africa to the Lesotho government amount to 780 million rand in 2015. The equivalent to about 5% of Lesotho's state income outside of taxes. 1998. One of my favorite online content creators, Zimasa Vabaza, Mustafa, would make an amazing video if you ever have a chance to go watch it, documenting that South Africa invaded Lesotho in 1998. South Africa had its first democratic elections and President Nelson Mandela 1994. So this would be 4 years later. Chief Mangosuthu Buthelezi, the leader of Inkatha Freedom Party, the IFP, from KZN, Prime Minister of the Zulu Nation, would be the one leading this invasion on behalf of the South African government. Why not Mandela? No, apparently he was overseas traveling. Why not Thabo Mbeki, the deputy president? No, apparently he was also busy with government work and he was also traveling. So the Minister of Home Affairs at the time, Mangosuthu Buthelezi, would be tasked to lead this. There had been discussions under SADC, with the SADC agreements, to go and get involved with Lesotho. But we don't know if this is really, really accurate. There were rumors of a military coup in Lesotho at the time. The government of the time felt that there was an uprising, a military uprising at the time. And South Africa, I think, with Botswana, were asked to intervene. Could it be that Mangosuthu was actually doing this because he wanted more land for the Zulu people? Could it be that Mandela and Mbeki didn't want to be involved in this thing, knowing very well that you've got things like the Highlands Water Project, Africa's largest water transfer scheme, of which South Africa already pays royalty to Lesotho. If we colonize and conquer this land, we don't have to pay them, and Lesotho effectively becomes one of our provinces. They would intervene, life would go on. Some people argue that to this day, whatever happened there was not documented well enough. And we don't know what are the consequences of that invasion, because just under 50 people died in those conflicts, with the SANDF, the military force of the South African government, going in there. What happened? What was going on? Were there so-called rebels that were undermining government? Or could it be that the government asked other people to intervene because the people were uprising? We've got a similar situation in Eswatini now, where there are many citizens of Eswatini that no longer want to be ruled by Umswati, and they want democracy. At times they will lose internet connectivity, at times their borders get closed and people can't travel, and no one is intervening, and the question is why? Why would South Africa intervene in Lesotho? Is it because of this water situation, where they know that there is something to be gained? Is it something else? There are rumors now that there are commodities in the mountains of Lesotho that have yet to be discovered. The day someone goes to Lesotho and starts mining properly, it is virgin land. The wealthiest man in Lesotho, arguably, Ntsukwane Samuel Matekane, also known as Sam Matekane, is currently the Prime Minister of Lesotho. He's built his fortune through diamond mining and then government construction contracts. He founded his company, the Matekane Group of Companies, in 1986. Diamond mining. Just recently, I consulted. I offer consultations, by the way. I consulted in terms of business with a South African native who's working in some of the mines in Lesotho. And these were some of the conversations we had, that Lesotho is virgin territory from a commodities perspective. Never mind their stunning water that is wanted not just in South Africa, but around the world. We don't speak about that 1998 invasion. Another question for me would be the Zamazamas. You'll see some of these guys living in informal settlement squatter camps in South Africa. They're still wearing the traditional boots that Sutu men wear because of rainy seasons in the mountains and the mud. So it's become their attire. They still wrap themselves in the blankets. Sometimes they wear balaclavas, amakopa head, or they wear their hats. A lot of these guys come from Lesotho to come and mine here. And their arguments are that we've been mining in South Africa since before 94. So who are you to tell us? Before the apartheid government took power, we are just coming to mine Southern Africa like everyone else. And when you look at the history, you realize again, the BaSotho people were part of the people that would be in South Africa from as far back as the 5th century. The 5th century, from as far back as the 8th and 9th century, we had their pottery, we had them as iron workers. So they're like, no, as much as Lesotho is whatever the British said we can live on, but this is also our land. If anything, the Orange Free State is also ours. Parts of KZN, parts of Mpumalanga, parts of the Gauteng is also ours. This is our land. But today we see them as criminals, and some of them are accused of very, very violent crimes as Zamazamas. There was a situation where I think it may have been close to Spruit View, Katlehong, Eguruleni in the east rand of Gauteng or east of Johannesburg, where some South Africans that were marching were shot at by some of these guys. Where are they getting guns from? How are they operating? Guys come from Lesotho, they come into South Africa undocumented. They come and they mine illegally, and then they go back home. This becomes another conversation that we're not having with the government of Lesotho, with BaSotho people as well. What do we say about Bantustans? The apartheid government saw it fit to split South Africa into different groupings. They would have the Cape Province, they would have the Vrystaat, the Free State, they would have the Transvaal. Then they would give black people their own homelands. KZN wasn't really a homeland, but you had Natal and then you had KwaZulu, which under the Ngonyama Trust was taken care of by uZwelithini, the king of the Zulus. Then you had the Transkei, you had the Ciskei, which would be the Xhosa people. This would be the split, arguably, of Uktalega, no, the children of Upalo. Uktalega, no. Sorry, I just want to get the names for you. And Khakhabe. Transkei, Ciskei, of course, they would be ruled by their leaders at the time. We had Poputa Tswana under Umangope, of which part of it, I think, became the Northwest. Part of it became a part of Botswana today, which is on its own. We had Venda as an example. People say they don't want Bantustans today. From 1990, these were dismantled and we became one united South Africa. Is Eswatini not a formalized Bantustan for the Swati people? Is Botswana not a formalized Bantustan for the Tswana people? Is Lesotho not a formalized Bantustan for the people of the Sutu people? And maybe even a place like Namibia, which only got its independence, I believe, in 1990. Independence from South Africa. Are these not Bantustans, and is this not what we want? Or do we want to remove the borders and create one united SADC and say we need Botswana to be a part of us? We need Namibia, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Lesotho, Eswatini to be a part of us and create one SADC country with these different provinces that maybe have their own premiers or prime ministers or whatever the case may be. Those become some of my fascinations. And these are some of the things that I'm really hoping, some of the conversations I'm hoping we can have. What do the people of Lesotho want? They are a landlocked country within a country. They do not have a beach, an ocean. They rely on South Africa for their harbors and their ports and even our airports. They need our airports to move a lot of their goods. How important is the Highlands Water Project to the water supply of South Africa? If ever we were to actually fight with Lesotho, what about the dangers of them maybe even poisoning the water that comes from them if ever they needed biological warfare? Can we work together? Should we be formalizing zamazamas into formal artisanal mining as they have in places like Zimbabwe and not being bullied by big mining companies, especially foreign owned? What do we say about the Sutu people in places like the Free State, Gauteng, etc.? Do they not deserve to have their own land? Or are we moving in another direction where we want to destroy all of that, etc.? What does King Letsie have to say, the third? What does the Prime Minister of Lesotho have to say? What do the people of Lesotho have to say? And from a South African perspective, how well do the BaSotho people living in South Africa know their own history? The history of Moshoeshoe, the history before Moshoeshoe, to say our people actually come from here and these are our clans. Are they comfortable with the Pedi people being known as Sutu people as well, Northern Sutus? Are they comfortable with the Tswana people being known as Sutu people as well? Or is it like these are not our people? These are completely different people and we don't like the fact that you group them all under Sutu. As I said, these are some of the questions that come up for me and it leaves me with more questions than answers. Thank you so much for joining my attempt at history research. Please educate us. Please educate us in the comments. and let us know. When you go online, you'll see some of the clans, very popular, the Bataung, the lion, the people of the lion, the Bakwena, the people of the crocodile. You've got the people of Tswene, the baboon, etc., etc. Prominent clans, Sutu and also Tswana clans that we need to educate ourselves and other people, including your own Sutu children, on. Penuel Lipene Enso. Re a leboha.